Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD1111 class for the fall 2020 semester at Rankin, I've been going through a series of video presentations based on the textbook for our class, which is Get Programming with Node.js by Jonathan Wexler. It's a Manning publication. But even before that, I started to think about this a little earlier, and you were sent what I called an AWD1111 suggested summer reading list. And I talked to Mr. Paul Smith about this, and originally this was about 4 pages long, and he said, you know, really what we're looking for is about 1 page that's going to start to go over the major things that are going to be covered in this class. So I did. I boiled it down to 1 page. And right now I'm going to go over this article right here and start to go over this one. This will be a perpetual. I mean, we'll have to go over it in stages. But as we take a look here, the first one is called a head-to-head standoff between MERN and MERN, a comparison of 2 popular JavaScript stacks. Now it's January 29th, I believe, of this year. And let me just say, when you look at MERN and when you look at MERN, all right, other than the E that, or the A that one has for the 3rd letter and the R that the other one has, the rest of the stuff in there is the same. In both cases, the M stands for MongoDB, the E stands for Express or Express.js, and the N stands for Node or Node.js. In the first case, the A stands for Angular. In the second case, the R stands for React. And as mentioned in here, they're both popular. I believe MERN has been around longer, and MERN is kind of catching up in popularity. And we'll talk about what they each mean in just a minute as we go on through this document. So the author says here, when we refer to a stack, we're referring to something called a technology stack. And as it says in that second paragraph down, it's a combination of things, in this case, programming languages and software that together you use to create an application. For us, it's going to be a web application. As it says, these are the frameworks, languages, and products that everything else is built on. So, because again, MERN has been around longer, we're going to start with that. As it says here, in simple words, MERN is explained as a full-stack JavaScript framework that simplifies and accelerates web and application development. Well, what does that mean? That means, for lack of better words, it allows you to use JavaScript on both the front end, and that's the client side. That's what we basically did with JavaScript in the AWD1000 class. But it also allows you to use JavaScript on the server side. And that's a lot of, in my opinion at least, of what Node.js is about. So, as already mentioned, MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node.js are technologies that make up this. You'll notice that we've got a hyperlink here and a hyperlink there. So if you want more, I'm going to eventually be going over all these using different articles than the ones that are shown there. But if you like this article and you want to read on, whatever. In recent times, some complex websites and web apps are being powered by Myrn Stacks. As it says, it's one of the fastest growing open source stack development frameworks. Alright. It has popular tools and plugins. It allows for quicker deployment, less time spent on system administration. Alright. And let's take a quick look at each of these 4 components. Now, MongoDB, as you probably guessed, the DB stands for database. And as mentioned right here, MongoDB, document database used by your back-end application to store its data as JSON. We haven't really done a good job so far in this program about talking about JSON, but we will. JSON is JavaScript object notation. Once you start to understand how to use objects in JavaScript, and especially ES6 objects, which look very similar to what we've already done in C#. Not at all the same, but similar. All right. So MongoDB is the database. Express or Express.js. Notice it's a back-end web application framework. What does that mean? Back-end, again, implies that it's server-side. But it's an application framework because everything we will have done until we get into more Express, everything we're doing from a terminal. In other words, we're doing it from more or less a command line. Angular, notice where Express is back end, Angular is front end. As it says, it runs your JavaScript code in the user's browser, and it allows the user interface to be dynamic. Finally, we've got Node.js, which is kind of the core of what the class that you're in is all about. You've heard this before, and you'll hear it again. It's a JavaScript runtime environment. Notice it lets you implement your back end using JavaScript. All right, now we're going to go over the benefits of the Myrn Stack, and you'll notice as we do that they're at least similar to the same benefits as the Myrn Stack. So the first benefit here covers the full web development cycle. In other words, front end to back end, and it allows you to use a single language for both JavaScript. It supports MVC, or Model View Controller architecture, to make the development process flow smoothly. Now, the last time this class was taught, the AWD1111 class, and unless it gets a name change this summer, it has been called .NET Framework with Web Databases. But mainly it was a class in ASP.NET where the students learned Model View Controller architecture. Just to very quickly just give you a sentence or so on each one, and let's take it in reverse. The controller basically is kind of like the administrator or the supervisor, however you want to refer to it, because they're typically in a really well-written model view controller environment. Typically, there's no direct communication between the model and the view. Rather, all communication takes place between the model and the controller, or the view and the controller. So the controller, again, is kind of like a go-between. All right, its job is to take requests as they come in and to figure out exactly what should be done with them. Then you've got the view. The view is the front end. The view is what the end user sees. Now, most often, the front end is going to be some kind of HTML when you're talking about a website. Finally, you've got the model, and typically what the model is it holds your business logic, the application logic. Quite often, the model will also hold the database. All right, because those are intertwined with one another. But a request comes in, typically the controller figures out what model it should go to. The information is sent to that model, it does its thing, it sends the information back to the controller, which figures out the view that it should show the end user. Now that's put really simplistically, all right? But that's the way that I look at it. Number 3 benefit, helps to resist unnecessary grunt work, thus keeping the application more organized. And you will see this as we go through here. There's a structure that's typically used in a folder structure, and the way that you set things up, and it tends to work pretty well. Fourth, the merger of 4 great technologies: MongoDB, Express.js, Angular, and Node.js. And I believe that they will even mention, for the benefits of the Myrn Stack, it'll say the merger of four great technologies: MongoDB, Express.js, React, and Node.js. Okay. All right. It comes with a pre-built executive suite of testing tools. It's open source and frameworked, and this, backed by good community support, is really, really important. All right. So what is the Myrn Stack and why should we choose it? Well, the Myrn Stack, this looks very similar to what we saw earlier. In other words, it's a combination of technologies used to create web apps. All right, it's a JavaScript stack used for the smooth flow of the development process. Again, MongoDB, Express or Express.js, but now React and Node or Node.js. All the components, as it says, provide end-to-end framework support for developers to work in. As time is going on, the Myrn Stack is becoming increasingly popular. We already talked about MongoDB. We've already talked about Express. Here's React. Again, like Angular, it's a JavaScript front-end library. And we've talked about Node already. Again, as they mentioned right here, the Myrn Stack is very similar to the Mean Stack. The only difference here is that the Mean Stack uses Angular, but the Myrn Stack uses React. The benefits, again, are very similar. Covers the full development cycle, front end to back end. Supports Model View Controller. Developers only need to be proficient in JavaScript and JSON. So in other words, what they're saying there is there's not a lot of other things that you have to learn. The ability of the four best technologies. This is the same thing that was in the other one, except the other one had Angular rather. This has React. Again, comes with pre-built extensive set of testing tools. Again, open source. And again, good community support. So the author says here, here's the conclusion. Which one should you use? And basically, it's a crapshoot. In other words, it's the one that you prefer. Mean has been on the market longer than Myrn, but Myrn is picking up popularity. As it says, they're both sound and viable options. The final choice should depend on the demands of the project and the application developer's familiarity with the technologies involved. Okay, that's good enough for that one. And I am going to come back in just a moment. And on the second part of our summer reading list, these are the only two I'm going to go over right now. I'm going to start to go over this introduction to Node.js. By no means, there must be 20 or 30 lessons in there, and I'll go over the beginning stuff. So I'll come back and be doing that in just a couple moments. See you then.